CCU Orlando presents The Authentic Spiritual Journey, a weekly show featuring real and practical spiritual conversations from diverse perspectives here on the Experience of the Soul podcast channel. Today, episode 52, Your Life is Meaningful and Has Purpose, 7 Signs of an Evolving Soul, Part 4. And now, your host, Reverend Cynthia Alice Anderson.
Hello and welcome to The Authentic Spiritual Journey. My name is Cynthia Alice, otherwise known as RCA. And I am the host of The Authentic Spiritual Journey. And we're here, this is the 1-year mark.
I know, this is show number 52. This concludes 1 year every week.
Yes.
Of shows.
Yeah, I'm proud of that. And I am here in 818 Studios with my very committed producer.
Hey, everybody. My name is Dave Croft. Thank you so much for joining us for our 52nd Authentic Spiritual Journey show.
Yeah, I can't tell you what the support means. We've had some wonderful support over the last year and wonderful new support coming in. So I just acknowledge all of that. And you're going to be hearing more about our new sponsors coming up. So we bless all of you for listening, and especially those who are sharing this message to friends, to family, and around the world. We feel so honored to be in over 30 countries and over 18,000 downloads. Every time we get together, there's even more sharing of the show. So we acknowledge you for that, because that means you are doing the soul work. You are being lifted up by this. And it inspires us when you continue to share the show and you continue to listen. So we appreciate you joining us.
Yes, speaking of countries, today we are honoring our listeners in Nigeria.
Oh, cool.
Yeah,
Very
thank
cool.
you so much for listening to us literally halfway across the planet.
Yes, bless you in Nigeria. I had one of my teachers of drumming, of African drumming, was from Nigeria. So,
yeah? Very cool.
So that's very cool. I also had a good friend growing up from Nigeria. So I'm saying hello to Okum John Okum.
Yeah, and it still amazes me, and I know I shouldn't be. Maybe I should, but at this point in my age and how long the internet's been around,
yeah.
Even still, I'm blown away by the fact that there are listeners in Nigeria listening to what we do, sitting in our little studio here in Orlando.
Yes, well, it is, but a very professional studio here in Orlando.
Well, yeah.
So yeah, but yes, exactly, and it is impressive that we can do it. And it reminds me that in the old days of Unity, which is the denomination where I'm a minister. In Unity, many years ago, the co-founders, Charles and Myrtle Fillmore, they were broadcasting from Unity Village, and there was this big knob, that was not supposed to go past a certain place. And Charles Fillmore said, well, let's just boost the signal and see what happens. And the signal made it all the way to Africa.
Oh, wow.
And we have Unity churches in Africa today because of that. So what I'm wondering is if the people listening to us from Nigeria are in fact from are in Unity circles, or how you might have found us. So if you listen to this podcast, we'd love to know how you found us and, how this is meaningful to you and in your life. And we definitely bless you and thank you for joining us.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for listening.
And it's wonderful that at year 1, we are continuing with this series. This is, we started at the beginning of June, a series called 7 Signs of an Evolving Soul. And now every time I think about it, I keep just getting 7 signs. And this is week 1, 2, 3, 4. This is the 4th week. And the title for today's show is Your Life is Meaningful and Has Purpose. Your life is meaningful and has purpose. But before we get into that, I want to review or at least mention the first 3. And like as I mentioned, the first one came out on June 3rd, and I had a good time listening to it again. And what's so amazing about these discussions, Dave, that we have is, this really is, the show is about spiritual conversations. And in the shows where it's just me, it's mostly me talking. But, what you add is great, and the questions you add is great. And it was really, I thought that the first show on You Love Yourself was really good. It was an insightful show for me personally, listening to it. So I learned from you, from myself, and I think when we're really listening to Spirit, that's what happens.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, two souls just kind of having a conversation, and listeners, if you're listening and comments, questions, you want to pipe into the conversation, by all means, we would look forward to making an effort to reading either listener suggestions or listener
Right.
comments or questions or those kind of things. And so you too can be a part of the conversation.
Right. And I know how it works. I just know how the mind works from being a minister for so long, that when we're having a conversation, you're having your own internal dialogue. And I think that's one of the reasons the show works. So we are grateful that you're in it with us. So the 7 signs of an evolving soul are as follows. I'm going to read all of them, because every show we want to, that we're on this, we want to read all 7, maybe a couple times. So number 1, you love yourself. Number 2, your heart is open and loving. Third sign of an evolving soul is you are aware that you are one with all. Number 4, which we're doing today, your life is meaningful and has purpose. Number 5, you identify with the soul and not the body. 6, you seek opportunities to be vulnerable. And finally, number 7, you feel comfortable in the unknown. So, number 1, you love yourself, again, is the number 1 most important one. And also remember that as we're doing this work, it doesn't mean we have 100% accomplished each one of these in totality. The title is Seven Signs of an Evolving Soul, which means each of these points we're discussing, we are evolving in. And for some of us, it could be we feel like we're brand new. For some of us, maybe we've been doing it for 20 years. It doesn't matter. We're all here to grow and evolve as souls. And in fact, I was talking with a good friend the other day, Victor Fontaine, and he said it this way, we're in the physical body to spiritually evolve. And that's true. The only reason we're here as souls is to evolve in spiritual consciousness. So number 1, you love yourself is of utmost importance, because if you love yourself, all the rest of the next 6 points are much easier to do. And again, they evolve more easily as well. Number 2, your heart is open and loving is, of course, about no matter what's happening in life, no matter what's coming your way, you do your best to stay open and loving. It doesn't mean we don't have feelings. As a matter of fact, we talked about a couple weeks ago that when you do have feelings, that's really normal, but we don't react from, especially if it's a feeling of anger or fear. We try to take a moment to center ourselves and still use that emotion to figure out what's ours to do next, but still maintain an open and loving heart, and realize that as we do that, we're not only helping ourselves, but we're also helping the whole situation, whatever that might be. Because we know if somebody's in anger and we respond in anger, you got a problem on your hands.
That's right.
Yeah. So that was number 2. And then finally, last week, we talked about that you are aware that you are one with all. And we talked extensively about the word aware and what that means, just to become conscious. And that when we become conscious that we are one with all, it begins to impact every decision we make, from the way we do relationship, from the way we drive our car, to, in fact, even the way we respond to others, and even the environment itself. I don't throw trash on the ground if I know I'm one with all, because I know that is impacting me. There is no out there, we talked about. There is no other, that we are all connected. So those were the first 3. You love yourself, your heart is open and loving, and then you are aware you are one with all. So today, this is something I've talked about for many years too. Today is, your life is meaningful and has purpose. Your life is meaningful and has purpose. Over the years, I have met with many, many people, one-on-one. I've supported ministers, business leaders. And what I have found is that a life that has meaning and is on purpose brings a lot of happiness. I have also learned that when someone is not living from their joy and not on purpose, boy, that can lead to tremendous problems, including depression, just all sorts of issues. And so today is especially important for me because this podcast is at 1 year today. And I feel so strongly that this is a part of my work on planet Earth. Literally, is to bring this podcast. My life's vision, in other words, the highest vision I have for my life, is to ignite soul evolution in humanity. This means I have to get the word out about evolving souls, and I have to do it as much as possible. So I do it every day at my work at the office at CCU Orlando. I do it on Sunday morning with my messages. I do it on the meditations, on the daily affirmations, and certainly on this podcast. So today, I just wanted to say thank you to all of you for listening, because you listening and you supporting this show helps me live my purpose. The fact that you feel supported by it, guided by it, uplifted by it, really, really inspires me. I think I even said that earlier, but I want to say it again because of what this show is about today. So it gives my life meaning and purpose to show up, to do what's mine to do, and I enjoy it. It brings me so much joy. So that's important. Many people over the years have asked me, well, how do I know if I'm living my purpose? And the number one way you know is your happiness quotient. Your happiness quotient. How happy are you doing what it is you're doing? Yeah. There was a guy years ago who wrote a book. His name was David Hawkins, and he wrote a book called Power versus Force. Power versus Force. And I had the opportunity to meet Dr. Hawkins. I used to work at Unity Village, and we brought Dr. Hawkins in as a speaker. And he did a lot of interesting things with calibrating frequencies of energy using kinesiology, otherwise known as muscle testing. So I saw him recently do an interview, and I just happened upon it. I saw him recently do an interview where somebody wanted to know, I was trying to remember the exact question. What frequency, her question for him was, what frequency do I calibrate to? You know, somebody was trying to figure out, they were asking Dr. Hawkins basically to tell them what their life was worth in a number. And he said, well, I don't know and I don't care what you calibrate to. He said, but how you will know if you're living from a high consciousness is your level of happiness. So, and by the way, I have a friend who's a happyologist who could tell us a lot about this. So your happiness quotient, it tells you a lot about if you're living on purpose or not. So, and if you're not happy, there may be things you need to stop doing and new things you need to start doing. You know, years ago, somebody asked the Dalai Lama, you know, what's the key to happiness? And he goes, well, stop doing the things you don't like to do and start doing the things you do like to do. So this sounds simple, friends. And I know when we feel stuck in certain situations, it seems anything but simple. The truth is simple. Following through can be a very complex and I'll even say arduous journey if we find ourselves in a situation that we don't want to be in. So I want to just acknowledge that. I'm not saying this lightly, but I am saying that we have all the tools we need to know, are we on purpose? Are we happy? You and only you can know that.
Right.
You know? So it was like in my life as a musician, I say my former life as a musician when I was doing that full time. And at the time, I really loved it. You know, I was teaching, I was playing, and I was conducting, and I really loved being a musician. I loved the people I worked with. I loved, I didn't mind carting my own gear, all of that. It was just part of it. But at some point I said, something is missing for me. And it wasn't that it wasn't enjoyable, but it was like, I kept feeling like something was missing. So what had one time been very, very fulfilling, you know, over time was just not as fulfilling.
Yeah, I had the exact same thing when I was transitioning out of being a private music teacher.
Yes.
You know, and I can't remember if I've mentioned this on the show or
not. No, but go ahead.
But yeah, I used to teach private lessons, and I would have many students come over to the house, and I had a drum set up here and everything. Mm-hmm. And it was when I found myself relieved and happy when students would cancel.
Right.
That's when I knew
It's like, oops.
the money was great, 40 bucks an hour.
Yeah.
That's easy money to sit there and, watch 15-year-olds play drums. It's cool. I play drums all day long.
Right.
But that's when I had to take a really hard look. And this is something that I was good at, that came relatively easy to me, and I was more than equipped and educated to do, but was life draining, not life filling. And so I had to walk away from it.
Right. And the reason I have the title, your life is meaningful and has purpose. If you find at the end of your day that you really feel like you've done something meaningful, that's a great feeling to have. And rather, you don't want to feel relieved, then okay, this is, and again, it's not wrong. The students aren't wrong.
That's right.
And the soul, remember, we are evolving. And so sometimes it helps me to think of different stages of my life, like in sections, like as a lifetime unto itself.
Right.
Like my musician lifetime was an incredible lifetime, and I still play music. I still have a ton of drums. I still do that, some on my own, but I just don't identify now as a professional musician. And it's like, I'll always have that in my soul, but my soul just needed a new way of expressing. And I could have stayed a musician my whole life. As a matter of fact, I thought about it. I was either going to, this sounds a little nutty now, but this was my thought in my mind. Either I need to go audition for Stomp. I need to do something really like that catapults me.
You need to really put yourself out there
in a new way. It's like I either need to like audition for an orchestra, go to audition for Stomp. I just knew the way I was doing my life, something had to give or something had to shift, or I had to go into ministry. Because I'd felt this call to ministry since I was a little kid, and had always worked in the church in some form or another. I was the music director, or the choir director rather, at 15. My sister played the piano and my brother was playing the organ. So I grew up in the church and I grew up working in the church, but I kept wanting to minister, and then I would go off and do other stuff, and then I would get another choir directing gig. So I kept working in the church, but that call to ministry just would not let me go.
Right.
So I wanted to finish that thought. I think I started to say that I could have stayed working as a musician the rest of my life, and there would have been nothing less about that. As a matter of fact, that would have been fine. And probably for a lot of people, they would have thought I was nuts for doing that, because I made a lot of money. I made
It's comfortable living.
It was a comfortable living as a working musician in a great town in Seattle that I loved.
Yep. And
then when the call of ministry just, came back in again, it was like, okay, I got to go. And the money showed up, everything. So you and only you can know where you are on the soul journey. And it's why we always say, and I often say on Sunday, that you are in a individual soul journey. So for you, maybe staying in a career is something you need to do, when for me, leaving that career was something I need to do.
Yeah, and I firmly believe that if you move out of something, especially if you're moving out of something that maybe is serving other people on some level, like being a student, a teacher of drum students, I firmly believe that by me staying in a place that I knew I probably shouldn't stay, that I was more than likely I was blocking someone else from stepping into something that they should be. You know what I mean? Like I'm keeping that.
Yes.
I'm keeping somebody else's opportunity because they're gonna stay with me. And so I believe that by walking away from that, then somebody who really has a passion and really wants to pour into these young people, that will give them the avenue to do that.
That's true. Yeah, that's very, very true. And that even happened before I took the job at CCU Orlando. The minister who was there, who was a fine minister, he said he was in prayer one day and just got, I'm sitting in somebody else's chair. This, there's nothing wrong. I love this ministry, but it's time to go. Yeah. And so I think when you, and so many people I know who listen to the show are following their inner guidance. I know because I've heard stories from you, and it is both scary and invigorating and very, it makes me feel very alive when I trust that voice. And all of these 7 steps, honestly, these 7 signs, it requires you to be engaged with your soul through the intuition, through this feeling, through this knowing, even through the seeing of what your next steps might be.
Yeah, I'm actually currently going through this. I do a lot of theater work as a performer, and I love theater work. I love doing it, but I have found, especially coming out of April, which is my last theater gig that I did,
That was a big
got
month.
really busy, and it totally threw me off my production groove, whether it's composing or whatever.
Right.
And I spent the entirety of May, basically. I don't know if it was blocked. I don't think it was like writer's block or whatever, but just the drive. It's like, because when I do theater work, it's all you do, because it takes so much time. It absorbs so much of your world, and you're there for like 6 and 8 hours at a time every single night for almost 3 straight weeks.
Yeah.
And the entire month of May, I was just out of the groove. I mean, like literally, not literally, but like imagine a needle not being in the right spot on a record. And pulling out of that was really tough. And
It is.
so, and playing at CCU and that kind of thing, that's never like felt giggy,
Right.
But I'm
Well, because it's part of your ministry, playing at CCU.
That's right. But
Yeah.
I'm currently like, hey, do I need to stop doing this? Not because I don't physically have time, or not because the money's not great, because it's pretty decent money. But I'm struggling with, once you're out, because they'll hire another guy, and then that guy will be the guy.
And then that is the guy. That's it. And that was actually hard for me pulling out of gigs as well, because, there's this, I had an incredible teacher. His name's Dan Adams, and he started giving me gigs, when I was still in college. And I one day I said, "How are you so busy?" And he goes, "Well, I just say yes to everything." And he said, "Every gig gets me my next one by how I show up." And that's exactly, and especially if you're a drummer and you don't push tempos, people
right, and I can read and play to the volume of the room.
Exactly,
all that stuff.
exactly. Then they're going to keep having you back, for sure. So yeah, that's important. And what it brings up for me, and Dave, you mentioned a little bit of this, and this was in my consciousness earlier about money. So we really want to stay away from money really being a focus in terms of living our purpose, because money has nothing to do actually with living your purpose. So often we equate career with purpose. It may or may not be, but your purpose really is known only to you and God, and it's ultimately for all of us to be God in the world. Right. So how it comes through us individually is what shifts and changes, as we grow and evolve. But whether we're paid for it or not is really never the reason we want to head that direction. Yeah. As a matter of fact, often when you're on purpose, at first you have to take less money.
Oh yeah.
So if money is what you're after, this might be a hard point for you.
Right.
So we're gonna talk a lot more about this as we come back right after this break.
We'll return to the program in just a few moments, but first, we wanted to give a special word of thanks to our podcast partner, CCU Orlando, who has helped make this episode of the Authentic Spiritual Journey possible. CCU Orlando is a welcoming community dedicated to transforming lives, celebrating diversity, and supporting soul growth. Christ Church Unity is located at 771 Holden Avenue in Orlando, Florida, with Sunday services at 9 and 11 a.m. You can stream services live online as well as learn more at christchurchunity.net. And now we return you to this week's episode of The Authentic Spiritual Journey.
Welcome back. We're glad you're with us for this important topic. Your life is meaningful and has purpose. Right before the break, we were talking about how money is probably not the best motivator or indicator of if you're living on purpose or not. What I find is that purpose is really about an inner feeling, and is not always about an outward is not about outward financial gain. But what I found for my own life and for so many people that I've worked with and served is that when we are on purpose, the money thing just kind of tends to work out, because you are in alignment with who you are and what you're here to do. But again, I want you to just think about with me that purpose doesn't necessarily mean career. For instance, if your purpose is really about service to others, let's say, that's really your purpose. then you can do that as an administrative assistant or as a doctor or as a mechanic or as somebody that works at a bookstore. I mean, it doesn't mean that you have to necessarily like work in the service industry or, where all you do is a specific kind of service. So be thinking about how your purpose is known in and through your life, and how it is. The word I like to use is desiring to want to be known in and through your life. Like, there's some aspect of what I do that carries over from being a musician. Like when I was a little kid, I always loved to teach and be with people. As a musician, I was always playing and teaching. And now as a minister, I'm always teaching, right? And I love to get people excited. Even like in college, I had a friend two friends actually, who said they changed their major because of meeting me and how much I love music. One became one went on to, get their master's in conducting because I loved conducting. Then they went into conducting, and another person changed from, something else to being a music major. And so it's always something I've really loved to do is get people excited. So that aspect of me carries through now in my ministry and then even in the podcast. So, I mean, my vision, I've said, is to ignite soul evolution in humanity. So that exciting, that getting people going, that igniting energy, that's always been there. But I used it as a teacher, as a musician, and now as a minister. So it may change again how I use that. I mean, one day in 10 or 20 years, I may or not be in the pulpit. I may or may not be in the pulpit. Right now, I feel like I will be, but I don't know. But what I know is, if I'm living on purpose, that's always growing and evolving. So doing the podcast is an evolvement for me because it's a completely different medium. I hope I get better at it all the time. That's my goal. When I listen to old shows, I think they've gotten better. Praise God. Thank you for listening. And so my purpose though is still like it goes through my life like a golden thread. It's always been there. It's always been there. Trying to, this joy that I receive from seeing people get a divine idea, or when people learn. It's like I love to encourage dreams. That's always been there. So I know that my life is on purpose. Again, when my happiness level is really high. When I have a lot of joy at the end of the day, where if I'm doing the podcast or working, I lose track of time because I'm having so much fun.
Yeah.
As a matter of fact, it's one of the things in ministry. So many of my colleagues talk about that. What can be difficult about ministry is the heavy administrative that we have now that even 10 years ago wasn't there. Now there's more. It used to be you had phone calls and visits and teaching and studying. Now you have phone calls and visits and email and Facebook and Instagram and visits and study and teaching and online stuff and podcast and
publishing your
and
own
publishing
works
my
and
own
books
works, all that. So I consistently am asking myself, what do I need to let go of to stay on purpose? Like I had to quit teaching for the ministerial school, even though it's like, okay, it seems like that's in line with my vision for my life. I ignite soul evolution in humanity, but I was like, you know what? Those students don't really need me doing that right now. That's just every time I really loved doing it when I was doing it, but it was just like, I'm not a match for where the school is. And I don't know. I just am not supposed to be doing that, and as soon as I stepped back from that, I got a wonderful opportunity to speak at pt4 Orlando. And I couldn't have said yes because the nights we were rehearsing would have been the nights I would have been teaching, so again, you will know if your life has meaning and it's on purpose. No one else can tell you that. And one of the clear ways you know it is how much joy you have when you're doing it, the feeling afterwards. Even do you lose track of time because you're having so much fun? And so,
and I'll say, if you're needing to step away from something, Even if it's something you love, something you're good at, maybe something that's profitable, maybe something that you're quote unquote expected to do.
Yeah.
I'll challenge you, listener. If you give fleeting thought to letting it go, and your heart smiles a little bit,
Oh, yes.
or you feel a little relieved, and you're like, oh, then that might be a sign. I'm not saying that's the only thing, but that might be a sign that this is something you have to let go. And my recommendation would be to put a time on it. Like when Shannon left Full Sail.
Yes, I know that was a big deal.
She knew a year out. And that's walking away from a very well-paying job, great benefits, very, very secure job. But she knew that was not her purpose.
Exactly.
And so she set a year. She's like, a year from now, I will be out of here. And I would say that if this is you, if some part of you is resonating with this, and there's already something, kind of effervescing in your mind about, hey, maybe I should let this go. Set a time and say, by this month, in 6 months, in 3 months, in 12 months, I want to be done with this. And I think if it's supposed to be out, the closer you get to that, I feel like you will see the universe start preparing a way to make that happen. And walking away from it will become easier, not harder.
Yes.
That's my experience, especially walking with Shannon, going through hers.
Yes, and what you're saying is so important. And listening, the first 3 points are really informing all we're saying today, friends, because when you love yourself, when you get these little insights or these intuitions of like, oh, okay, there's a fleeting thought that I might want to leave, and you go, well, what's that about? And so then you take time to check that out, because you don't want to wait too long, because that can bring bitterness. I'm staying anywhere too long is not good for you.
Right.
It can bring, again, bitterness. It can bring depression. It can even bring physical health challenges if you're feeling stuck somewhere. So it's funny that we're talking about meaning and purpose, and we've talked about needing to leave, but it is so a part of being on purpose, because everyone is vying for attention. Everybody's trying to, get a little bit of you in life. Like Dave was saying, if you're a good drummer, you're going to keep getting called. You and only you can decide
when enough's enough.
When enough is enough.
It's now life draining, not life filling.
Yes, yes. And so there's some big trust in all of these steps and all of these 7 signs. There's a huge trust aspect where we're willing to let go of something that we know that's comfortable to move into the unknown. Remember, number 7 was about moving into the unknown. So continuing to walk that path of trust. And sometimes we only have, just enough light for the next step. And that's what can be harrowing a little bit on the journey, is that, okay, it's like, I want my life to have meaning and purpose. What I'm doing isn't working. Okay, Spirit, like you're saying, Dave, I'm looking for signs from the universe. I have this feeling. Okay, next step. And as I'm saying all of this, there's nothing wrong with planning, friends. If you know you're going to step out of a job, plan as much as you can. Set money aside if you can. Talk to people who are moving into the thing you're wanting to do.
Yeah, part of Shannon sticking around at Full Sail was just very practically, we've been paying into her 401k retirement.
Yes. And
so she needed to get to a certain level so that the annual payments or what, I'm not sure exactly how it all works, but it was vested.
Yeah.
Otherwise if she left too early, then that bit of money she would and that's just a very pragmatic. But I will say, when she stepped out, she didn't have, the church hadn't brought her on full time at that point.
Exactly.
She's like, I need to step out. This is no longer good for me. I'm stepping away. Stepped out only, like you said, the next stepping stone is illuminated.
Yeah.
And then these other things started happening, and she's brought on full time at church, and she's just a much happier person.
Yes.
Her soul is so much more at rest. There's not this turmoil, and so it's been fantastic for her.
Well, and that's kind of happened with us, right? With the sponsors. I mean, talking with Natural Awakenings and also Unity of Nashville that are coming on as sponsors. That just felt so life affirming for the work that we're doing, because they just kind of came out of nowhere, So So being on purpose, friends, feels really good. It feels really, really good. And there's a lot of joy that comes with that. And what I find when we're on purpose is people want to be a part of it.
Yep.
People want to join you in it. People want to support you in it. We have certainly experienced that with the show. I just had an ask the other day about would I mentor somebody who wants to start a podcast. So anyway, there's a lot of good things happening, and we want you to know that your purpose is always. Sorry, I noticed recently sometimes I change tenses in the middle of sentences.
It's fine.
So I'm going to start.
It's authentic.
I'm
It's
going to
authentic.
start over. It's just my Southern. Well, I start one thought and I finish with another. What I wanted to say is your purpose has always been with you, and in some way you've probably always been living it to a degree. Our goal is to wake you up even more. If we were in church, I'd clap right now. I'd say, wake up, wake up, wake up. Our goal right now is to wake you up to the fact that there is more for you to do and be in the world. Often, to do those things, something has to be let go of so the new energy can come forth in and through you. But your purpose is probably not unknown to you. As a matter of fact, I think everybody knows what they're here to do on some level. What we've done over time, most of us, is we've kind of shut it down, or it seems hard, or it seems like, we can't see what all the steps and pieces are to make it happen. So we don't know how to fully be in it, but we really do know what's ours to do. So if you're sitting there saying, well, I don't know what my purpose is, I'm going to say, yes, you do. So quit pretending you don't know what to do.
And it doesn't have to be this giant
Yes.
world-altering thing. For example,
Right.
you don't have to bring a Mother Teresa level purpose. That's not. There's no bar that you're trying to. So your purpose might just be, my purpose is to spread kindness.
Exactly. It's that simple.
It's that. So your purpose might be, I'm going to be the best produce stalker.
That's right.
And
That's absolutely right.
That's equally as valid, as important, as right as reach millions of people.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And
Absolutely.
so don't think that it has to be this heavy, I have to solve homelessness or something like it. Could be whatever it is, if it sparks with you, if it speaks with you and resonates with you, then that's when the fulfillment will come.
Right. And remember, the joy that you feel in your life is a very, very good indicator. Your happiness quotient is so important. And I was glad you said that, Dave, because I was thinking something similar, that, sometimes we feel like, oh, if I'm on purpose, it means I'm going to solve the problem of cancer. Right. And I hope someone does, because cancer makes me mad. But that's not mine to do.
That's right.
Yeah, that's not mine to do.
And it's okay that it's not yours to do.
That's right. That's right. And again, we can get so the world itself is so alluring. Everything looks so important to do. And the fact is, some things we just should not be doing. I'm getting really clear on that myself. And boy, I've had to make some hard choices in the last several months about what I'm to be doing and not to do. But I know there's joy on the other side of that, because my heart is at peace. My heart is at peace with some of those choices. So I want to encourage you, friend, on the journey to do the things that bring you joy and bring meaning into your life. And you know what I mean by meaning, that you feel good about life because you showed up to do what's yours to do.
And is it okay to say it should probably feel pretty personal as well?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Personal to you, you mean?
Exactly.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes. And I think I spoke about this too a few weeks ago at church, that one of my favorite ways to give is to speak for, there's a local organization I volunteer for, and it's called Orlando Minority Youth Golf Association. And it's one of our members is the director, and he started it. And it teaches golf to minority kids, and so they're like age about 6 to about 18. And boy, it's an amazing, amazing program based in spirituality. They even do the prayer for protection at the end.
Oh, wow.
They call it Circle of Friends.
Very cool.
And they even do the new one, where we say, the light of God surrounds me. I am the light of God. They all do that. Mm-hmm. And it's boys and girls. And it's so important for me to just give away what I love, the teachings. And what was I going to say? That not everything should be for a dollar amount.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. If you're on purpose, you want to be able to give it away, and that's how you are, when it's not about, I get this many dollars to do this. I have an acupuncturist I work with, and he always says, if I could do it for free, I would. He's the least expensive acupuncturist I know, and he's amazing. And he said, I'm here to be of service and to heal.
Yep.
And so if you're on purpose, you do it because you can't help it. Like my friend Mr. Willie always says, I love you and there's not a thing you can do about it. So when you're on purpose, you can't help yourself. You want to do it. I was asked, I guess it's been about a year and a half ago now, a year and a half, 2 years ago, a local restaurant was opening down in the Paramore district, which is a very poor, kind of high crime, high minority district. And the woman who owns the cafe is a Muslim and does a lot of work with Muslim girls and teens and young women, especially, to help them get going in life. And she's really amazing. So she said to me, and it's really close actually to where Dr. Dorsey does his work with Orlando Minority Youth Golf Association. And they know who each other are, but they've never met. Anyway, she invited me to come down and do a book signing. And so I was like, well, why not? I've never done that before. And somebody said, well, you're going to go to a bad neighborhood. You're probably not going to make anything. And I said, who cares? I don't care about making anything. I can't even remember who said that. It was like, what? And so anyway, I went down there and I got there and there was hammering going on. The place I was supposed to set up wasn't set up yet. And I said, well, I'm going to enjoy every moment of this. And you know what? I did. I did, because everybody that came in, and it was, I would say 90% Muslim that came in. By the way, the food is incredible. It's called Foodie Cafe. And the food was incredible. And several of the Muslim women came in and said, oh my goodness, or Foodies, I think with an S, Foodies Cafe. They said, oh my goodness, what is this? And so, I was telling them about some of my books, 7 Spiritual Laws of Release and my Prosperity for You book. And several people bought everything I had. And then one of the employees who was brand new to these kinds of teachings said, I just like your energy and I want your books. And I said, here, just take them. I'll pay you overtime. I said, no. Right? So when you're on purpose, you want to give it away. Not everything is about a dollar amount. You want to give it away because you love it, because it's what you're here to do. So these are indicators. What's your happiness quotient? How much joy does it bring? And I like, Dave, your point. I wouldn't have said it like this, but I'm going to steal it.
Yeah, go for it.
That it's personal. It's deeply personal.
Yep.
When your life has meaning, and when your life is meaningful or has meaning and is on purpose, it's deeply personal.
Yeah, my sister found out, her purpose is helping at-risk kids in public schools.
There you go.
Primarily because she was essentially an at-risk kid.
Yes.
She made she screwed up a lot growing up. And
who better? Who
right,
better?
exactly. So when a kid tries to pull stuff over on her, she's like, I'm just going to stop you right there. I'm just a future version of you. And I'm here to tell you how the story ends if you don't change.
It's like I wrote the book on that. Yeah.
Right, exactly. My purpose is being, a composer.
Yeah.
And it is deeply personal. I can remember listening to Beethoven records on vinyl in my parents' stereo with headphones. I have pictures of me, with headphones on. And so that's deeply personal.
Yeah.
I'm not necessarily changing lives, with composing music, but that doesn't diminish, I'm not changing the world necessarily.
Well, but you are. But you are, because if somebody hears music, it touches their heart.
Yeah. No, you're right.
Right? So it looks different than my ministry looks. But sometimes on a Sunday, they remember the music, not what I said. Yeah, right? So we know that.
That's a good point.
So it does change lives. You just don't know how. There's not okay, I played this and therefore that.
Right. There's no altar call. I can't count up the number of souls changed by my music, but that doesn't mean, no, I hear what you're saying.
Right. And that you're on purpose changes a lot of souls too. So yeah. So that's all important stuff. What's your happiness quotient? Does it bring you joy? Is it deeply personal? That's probably the most important thing said all day is it's deeply personal. And then, are you wanting to give it away? That's how you know it's yours to do when you can't help but give it away because you love it so much, because you love to be of service in this way. So it may look different if you're an administrative assistant or if you're a minister or a composer, but remember, it's no less purpose. And so we just support you in this, friend. And I hope that you feel lifted by this today, because I feel if you're on planet Earth now, you definitely have a purpose. Mm-hmm. And I know that the world needs you on purpose now more than ever before. So I'm going to read now the 7 signs of an evolving soul as we end this time. Sign number 1, you love yourself. Sign number 2, your heart is open and loving. Sign number 3, you are aware you are one with all. Sign number 4, your life is meaningful and has purpose. Sign number 5, you identify with the soul and not the body. Sign number 6, you seek opportunities to be vulnerable. Sign number 7, you feel comfortable in the unknown. So we bless you, dear friend. We thank you for joining us. And as always, thank you for sharing this message with your friends and those you love. We're so happy that you are a part of our show. Happy 1 year, Dave. Happy 1 year anniversary.
Happy 1 year. Next week starts year 2.
Right. Thanks for joining us, friends, and blessings on the journey.
We hope you've enjoyed this episode of the Authentic Spiritual Journey presented by CCU Orlando here on the Experience of the Soul podcast channel. This channel is made possible through the continued support of our angel patrons, Dove Borland, Peter Gibson, Paul Caswell, and JJ Hamilton. If you would like to help be a part of bringing shows like this and other programs to the channel, please consider becoming a patron. You can learn more about supporting the channel, along with show notes and information about our other programs at experienceofthesoul.com. And if you enjoy this podcast, you can help spread the word by leaving a 5-star review on Apple Podcast, Google Play, Stitcher, or the podcast platform of your choice. The Authentic Spiritual Journey is copyright 2019, Cynthia Alice Anderson, all rights reserved. Our theme music is composed by Dave Croft and used with permission. The Experience of the Soul podcast channel is a production of 818 Studios.